What happens when a prince who claims to champion mental health awareness gets completely dismantled by one of America's sharpest late-night hosts? You're about to find out. And it gets brutal. Jon Stewart had just returned to his desk, and the producers had booked Prince Harry for what was supposed to be a friendly chat about his charitable work. The audience buzzed with excitement as Harry walked out, confident as ever, wearing his trademark blazer, smiling, waving like he was still on royal duty. Stewart greeted him politely. "Your Royal Highness, welcome to the show." But something in his tone hinted this wouldn't be the usual soft interview. Harry smiled and replied, "Please, just call me Harry. We're past formalities at this point." The crowd laughed, but Stewart didn't. He leaned back, hands steepled, eyes sharp, the kind of look longtime viewers knew meant trouble. "I was looking forward to having you on," Stewart began. "You've spoken a lot about mental health, therapy, breaking cycles of trauma. All important work." Harry nodded eagerly. "Absolutely, John. It's vital that we normalize these conversations. For too long, especially in my family, mental health was taboo. We buried it, and it kept hurting us generation after generation." Stewart tilted his head. "Right. I'm curious, though. You talk about breaking cycles and healing, but from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've built a career out of airing your family's dirty laundry. So tell me, are you healing, or just really good at marketing trauma?" The question hung in the air. Harry's smile wavered before he forced a laugh. "That's unfair. I've shared my truth to help others, not for profit." "Your truth," Stewart repeated, making air quotes. "Interesting choice of words. Because it seems your truth changes depending on which interview, book, or streaming deal you're promoting. So, which truth are we getting tonight?" Harry stiffened. "I've been consistent. I left an institution that was damaging to my mental health and my family's well-being. I've been open about that because transparency matters." "Transparency?" Stewart said evenly. "Sure. But you've been transparent about your father's flaws, your brother's jealousy, your stepmother's schemes, not so much about your own role in the dysfunction." "Convenient, isn't it?" Harry's voice rose. "That's not true. I've admitted my mistakes, my substance abuse, poor choices, all of it." "Right. The Nazi costume, the Vegas photos, the wild years," Stewart replied. "But those are easy confessions. The real question is, what about now? You didn't just leave the royal family. You burned the bridge and sold tickets to watch it burn." The audience fell silent. Harry leaned forward, tense. "You have no idea what I've been through. My wife was harassed, attacked, pushed to the brink. And you're making jokes about it?" "That's awful," Stewart said softly. "No one deserves that. But your response to invasion of privacy was to sell your story to the world. You fought media exploitation by becoming media." Harry's voice tightened. "We needed to take control of our narrative. The tabloids lied about us." "In your own words," Stewart cut in, "for millions of dollars. Look, I respect the hustle. It's America. But don't dress it up as a mission. You monetized your pain. Just own it." Harry's hands gripped the chair. "You're twisting everything. I came here for an honest discussion, not to be mocked." "I'm not mocking," Stewart replied calmly. "You had privilege. You lost comfort. You turned it into a brand. If you're proud of that, fine. But stop pretending it's martyrdom. The wounded healer act is getting old." Harry's composure cracked. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then enlighten me," Stewart said. "Because from the outside, it looks like emotional blackmail with a book deal. Validate me, or I'll tell the world how awful you are." Harry slammed his hand down, voice shaking. "Emotional blackmail? You sit there mocking people who try to make a difference." "Make a difference?" Stewart asked. "You left your job. Most people just quit and move on. They don't spend years monetizing their resentment. You didn't break a cycle. You just changed audiences. This was my family, My identity, my entire life. Everything I knew was taken from me because I dared to marry someone they couldn't accept, because I refused to play their games anymore. Stewart leaned forward, his voice adopting a mock sympathetic tone that only made things worse. Right. And I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that you were never going to be king, always the spare, never the star. I'm sure the timing, leaving right when it became clear you'd never be the main character, was just coincidence. The audience gasped. It was the kind of blunt truth everyone thought, but no one said aloud. Harry's face drained of color. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice had lost its earlier strength. "This was about protecting my family, keeping my wife and children from the same toxic environment that destroyed my mother." "Your mother," Stewart said, his tone shifting to something heavier but even more cutting. "Let's talk about her. Because you invoke her constantly. Every interview, every speech, every justification. Diana would have wanted this. Diana would have understood. But here's the thing, Harry. Your mother isn't here. She can't defend herself, can't clarify what she would have wanted, and she certainly can't consent to being used in your public relations campaign." Harry's hands shook as he gripped the chair arms. "How dare you? How dare you sit there and lecture me about my own mother? You have no right." "You're absolutely right," Stewart replied evenly. "I have no right to lecture you about your mother. But you seem to think you have the right to speak for her, to tell the world what she would have thought or done. You've turned her into a posthumous character witness for every decision you've made. Don't you think that's unfair to her memory?" "She was my mother," Harry said, his voice breaking. "I knew her better than anyone. I know she would have supported me, protected Meghan." "Maybe," Stewart said, shaking his head. "But maybe she would have told you to protect your family's dignity, to handle things privately. Maybe she would have been horrified by how you've aired every family argument for the world to see. We'll never know, because she's not here." The studio fell silent. Harry stared at Stewart with a mix of rage and heartbreak, as if realizing he'd been confronted with something he didn't want to admit. "You're a cruel man," Harry said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "You're twisting a son's love for his mother into something ugly." "I'm not attacking your love," Stewart replied calmly. "I'm questioning your use of it. Love is private. What you've done is public, deliberate, and profitable. You've turned grief into content, trauma into entertainment, and your mother's memory into a marketing tool. And when someone points that out, you act like they're attacking your pain instead of your choices." Harry stood abruptly, cameras scrambling to follow. "I'm done with this. I came here to talk about mental health and positive change. But you'd rather tear people down than listen." "Sit down, Harry," Stewart said, not unkindly, but with command. "Yes, we are done," Harry shot back, trembling with anger yet unable to walk away. "I think you're angry," Stewart continued, "because deep down you know I'm right. What you've done isn't brave. It's sad. You've built your entire identity around being the victim of circumstances most people would consider privilege." Harry exploded. "Privilege? You think growing up in that prison was a gift? Watching them destroy everyone I loved? You have no idea what that's like?" "You're right," Stewart said, rising to meet him. "I don't, but I know what it's like to take responsibility, to grieve without exploiting it, to build something instead of burning everything down." "You don't know anything about me," Harry shouted. "You mock things you'll never understand." "Then explain it," Stewart said, spreading his arms. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've spent years tearing down your family to build your brand. You've turned private pain into public profit, your wife's struggles into streaming content, and your children into symbols of a story you keep selling. Tell me, how is that heroic?" Harry's face flushed red. "You're sick. You get off on humiliating people. This is why I left, to get away from vultures like you." "Vultures like me?" Stewart asked. "You mean people who ask questions? who notice when your story doesn't add up. The world's full of people like me, Harry. And that was when Harry snapped. He tore off his microphone, the screech of feedback filling the studio. The audience winced as he waved it at Stewart like a weapon. "You think this is entertainment?" he shouted. "You think destroying someone on live TV is comedy? Humiliating a guest who came here in good faith. Is that the show?" Stewart remained seated, calm amid the chaos. "Harry, you're having a breakdown on television. Sit down, take a breath." "Adults?" Harry laughed bitterly, pacing like a man cornered. "You call this adult? Adults don't ambush their guests. Adults don't turn someone's trauma into punchlines. Adults don't pretend to care about serious issues just to tear down someone who's actually trying to make a difference." "Make a difference," Stewart repeats, shaking his head. "There it is again. You keep saying that, Harry. But what difference have you really made? What have all these interviews, documentaries, and tell-all books actually achieved besides making you richer and your family more miserable?" Harry stops pacing and turns to face him, eyes blazing. "I've started conversations. I've broken taboos. I've shown people it's okay to speak out against toxic institutions, to put mental health before outdated traditions." "You've started conversations," Stewart echoes mockingly. "You mean the ones where people argue about how much they hate your family now? Where your wife is called manipulative or misunderstood? Where your father and brother are turned into cartoon villains? Those conversations?" "At least people are talking," Harry snaps. "At least these issues aren't buried under centuries of keep calm and carry on nonsense." Stewart leans back, almost pitying. "Do you hear yourself? You sound like a teenager who thinks drama equals depth. You've confused chaos with change, publicity with progress. You haven't broken any cycles, Harry. You've just made them public." "You don't understand," Harry says, his voice starting to crack. "You have no idea what it's like to live trapped in a system that values image over humanity, tradition over truth, silence over justice." "Justice?" Stewart cuts in sharply. "Justice for what? For being born into one of the most privileged families in human history? For attending ceremonies and representing your country? What exactly is the great injustice here?" Harry's hands shake as he points at him. "The injustice is that my wife was driven to suicidal thoughts by racist coverage and institutional neglect. That my family cared more about protecting their image than protecting her. That I had to choose between my family and my duty to the crown." "No," Stewart says coldly. "You had to choose between being the center of attention and being part of something bigger than yourself. You chose attention. And now you're rewriting the story to make yourself the hero." "That's not true," Harry says weakly, sweat beading on his forehead. "Isn't it?" Stewart presses. "You've spent years destroying every relationship you've ever had. Your father, your brother, your friends, your colleagues. Anyone who doesn't validate your narrative gets thrown under the bus. That's not justice, Harry. That's revenge." Harry's face crumples, his voice breaking. "They abandoned me first. They chose the institution over me. They left me no choice." "They left you no choice," Stewart says softly. "But to become a professional victim? To turn your pain into profit? To drag your children into a feud that'll follow them for life?" "Don't you dare bring my children into this," Harry growls. "You brought them into it," Stewart replies evenly. "When you made your family's dysfunction public, you involved them. When you aired every grievance on the world stage, you made them part of your story. Your children will grow up knowing their father chose publicity over privacy, being right over being family." Harry's composure collapses. "You're a monster," he shouts. "A cruel, heartless monster who gets paid to destroy people. This is why I hate the media. Vultures like you who judge and humiliate anyone who doesn't fit your idea of how they should live." Stewart rises slowly, serious but calm. "I'm not your enemy, Harry. I'm just someone who refuses to pretend your choices were noble when they were selfish. Running away isn't brave. Burning bridges isn't heroic. Turning trauma into entertainment isn't healing. I'm done, Harry whispers. I'm done with this. With you. With all of it. He turns to leave, then pauses. You're right about one thing. I am angry. Angry I wasted years serving an institution that never valued me. Angry I tried to make it work when it never would. And angry I came here tonight thinking I could have an honest conversation with someone who only wants cheap shots, not truth. The dialogue's been plenty real, Stewart says quietly. You just don't like what it's revealed. Harry stares at him, chest heaving, then storms out. The cameras keep rolling as the audience watches in stunned silence. The studio doors slam shut, echoing through the room. Stewart turns back to the camera. Well, he says, voice subdued, that was something. I guess we'll have to skip the cooking segment tonight. No one laughs. The audience is too shaken, too aware they've witnessed something far from entertainment. A man unraveling live on air. Stewart straightens his notes, looking into the camera. We'll be right back after these messages. His voice lacks its usual confidence. Even he seems shaken. The lights dim. The crowd sits frozen, realizing they came for late-night banter, and instead saw how pride, pain, and unresolved anger can destroy a public image in real time. And somewhere beyond those studio doors, Prince Harry is likely realizing that he's just made the biggest mistake of his post-royal life. All because he couldn't bear to be asked the questions he should have been ready to answer.